We gather on a day of profound joy, of soaring hope, of renewed faith, and above all, a day to give our deepest thanks to the Almighty God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
President Trump with a powerful speech in Jerusalem yesterday, and he had a lot to say. In fact, a new column argues Trump's triumph is bad news for his adversaries. Here's a quote: Trump's successes make for bad news for his most zealous opponents. There was Trump addressing the Knesset, standing by the Israeli flag, receiving ovation after ovation. Let's just say it wasn't a good time for the Trump is Hitler people. All of that a quote in that op-ed in the Washington Examiner. Here are some of those people.
We have a Timmu Hitler in the White House right now that thinks that he is going to become the dictator of the United States.
I studied the Holocaust. I helped to build a Holocaust museum. This is what happened in the early days of the Nazi regime in Germany.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
Kind of like, the orange orangutan, the Timmu Hitler.
Disgusting. Many are looking ahead to what's next for the president's peace plans. And the Wall Street Journal editorial board has this headline: Trump's hostage triumph in Jerusalem. And it argues, quote, past hopes for peace have been crushed. Hamas gave in not to make peace, but because its alternatives were worse. It seeks to exploit the ceasefire to restore its power and return to war. Several Hamas leaders have already said the group won't disarm, and the terrorists may be reinvigorated by Israel's release of nearly 2,000 prisoners. That's a quote. Action on the ground today. Israel says its troops have fired on suspects in Gaza who crossed the boundary line, which was set up in part of the phases of agreement. And in focus now, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State and former CIA director, also a Fox News contributor. Great to see you. First of all, what do you make of just kind of the tenderness, the fragility perhaps of where we are in this peace agreement as, kind of it's categorized by the enemies of Trump?
Yes, Harris. Well, good morning. Great to be with you. It is fragile. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But what joy we saw and what power we saw exercised by President Trump and the Israeli leadership, right? This is exactly the opposite of what President Biden did. What President Trump did is he put pressure on Hamas. He told the Israelis, go do what's necessary. And Hamas then had no choice. The Wall Street Journal's piece is exactly right. Hamas no more wants peace than a man in the moon. They gave in because they were about to have the noose tightened on them even more. And so in this moment of great joy, and to say these families reunited is remarkable, the pressure cannot be relieved. The fact that the Israelis still control a good deal of Gaza, the fact that we still don't have the bodies of those slain hostages home, that all tells you that there's a lot more work that remains to be done. But President Trump is perfectly positioned to lead the charge to do just that.
Do you see a reinvigorated Hamas after all of this?
Not if we do this right. And here we, as an American leadership team, just as we have seen unfold with Midnight Hammer over Natanz and Fordow, and with Gulf Arab partners who say, no, we're going to take out the tunnels. We're going to continue to apply pressure. When Hamas does what it will ultimately do, it's a resistance movement. When it resists, we go back at it. There'll be moments like that. We have to be serious about that. If we get that right, we can continue to apply the pressure necessary to achieve the peace and stability that President Trump has worked so diligently to achieve this remarkable moment.
Yeah. So the fragility is real, and having those partners in the Middle East lean in with us will be very real and necessary as well.
Amen.
Ukrainian President Zelensky is hoping that the president's Middle East success could mean peace in Ukraine. Watch.
Ceasefire, it's big, huge step to peace deal. That's why I think this is real success. And of course, it gives signals for us and hope that with such pressure, what President Trump used in Middle East to make peace, and I hope that he will use the same instruments even more to pressure Putin to stop his war in Ukraine.
President Trump, on his way back from the Middle East last night, said he expects to host Zelensky at the White House this Friday. Zelensky posted this. The main focus of the visit is air defense and our long-range capabilities aimed at exerting pressure on Russia for the sake of peace. President Trump on Air Force One last night. Let's watch.
I might have to speak to Russia, to be honest with you, about Tomahawks. Do they want to have Tomahawks going in their direction? I don't think so. I think I might speak to Russia about that, in all fairness. I told that to President Zelensky, because Tomahawks are a new step of aggression.
Now, if memory serves me, that's what the president had fired into Syria after chem weapons were used by Bashar al-Assad. I remember the USS, I think it was the Monterey, I don't want to say it wrong, but the ship that carried them fired so many into that. He's not joking. Putin should be worried, should he not?
Harris, I remember that moment, too. I was the CIA director at the time when we fired dozens of Tomahawk missiles after Assad had used chemical weapons on his own people. Look, I think your clip showed it perfectly. The parallels are very real. Vladimir Putin is no more going to give up because he wants peace. I mean, that's crazy, right? He's going to give up when he realizes that is his only option, and more pressure being applied, whether it's the Tomahawks or allowing the Ukrainians to target economic and military targets inside of Ukraine, or inside of Russia, rather, deep inside. Those are the kind of things that just as we put pressure on Hamas and forced them to the negotiating table to give up, at least for the moment, the way to get a ceasefire in Ukraine is precisely the same. More pressure on Vladimir Putin will ultimately achieve that end. And I think whether it was Operation Midnight Hammer or what we've seen unfold in the last days, I think Putin must be strongly thinking President Trump is a serious man, totally prepared to deliver peace to Europe in the same way that he's done in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, Senator Thune moments ago brought up Iran and what the president did there to that mountain that housed the nuclear facility. He said, you know, you pay attention to those sorts of things. Your last quick thought.
Yes, I think that's right. And President Trump has a long history of this. You'll remember the strike on General Soleimani that we took in the first term. No one thought we'd do it. They thought it might cause World War III. In fact, it delivered a temporary peace in the Middle East. President Trump has demonstrated he knows how to use American power. It's not about deploying the 82nd Airborne and sending lots of troops. It's using all the tools in the American arsenal to deliver good outcomes for America and for the world.
All right. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Glad you were part of our show.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.